So I just got done listening to Liana's Bewbs tell me about conventions. I don't have boobs of my own, so I added some there to hold your attention. Sorry, just mowed the lawn a bit thirsty. Anyway, so I want to talk a bit about conventions as well. I don't especially want to spend a lot of time on Calgary. I think it's clear to anybody reasonable who's been keeping track, whether you agree with them or not, that they didn't do anything wrong. They went to a panel and they interacted. That's what panels are for. They had their stall up. There was nothing wrong with their stall. They clearly didn't falsify their paperwork or anything because, well, they've shown you the badges and everything else. So let's skip over that, because I think to any reasonable, rational person it's clear they didn't do anything wrong. Of course, there's plenty of irrational and unreasonable people, but let's just leave that for now. So talking about conventions more broadly. Okay, I've had tables, stalls, and attended quite a few conventions. I've run a few events, nothing on that scale, but I understand some of the legal implications and the insurance and so on, but only under British law. Okay, so technically, pretty much any convention or event will have a clause saying that they can bar you, throw you out, whatever, for any reason. But that doesn't really mean for any reason. When you enter into a contract with a host and they enter into a contract with you, it's assumed to be under good faith. It's assumed to be a good faith contract, which provides some basic protections for both parties. It also means that if you're going to get thrown out, it should be for a reasonable reason. The reason that clause is in there isn't to allow them to throw people out on a whim. It's to cover anyone who games the system or who does something bad that's outside the specifics of the contract. So that's what it's meant to be for, not just to toss people out on a whim. So yeah, they still have, well, I don't know Canadian law, but as far as I know, they still have a line there, and so it's the same for anybody else. You enter into a contract, it should be assumed to be in good faith, so you shouldn't get tossed for any reason. There should be a reason, even if it's not one of the specific reasons listed in the contract, and if it's not, then there's an issue. Conventions very much used to be negotiated in person between the people on the stalls and the people running them. So if you had something that skirted the line or slightly crossed it or whatever, there was leeway, there was room, you could have a conversation about it. When I was selling my Tentacle Wape game, Hentacle, at UK Eurogencon, places like that, it was important, I felt, to make sure it was okay. So we had conversations, because technically the paperwork would say, no, you can't sell anything like that. But if I sold it under plain cover and I told everyone and I made sure, then that was okay. So there was room for some negotiations, some give and take. There was no absolutism to it. And the trouble with a lot of these convention policies is that these days they're getting more and more restrictive. There's less and less room for that kind of give and take, that room for manoeuvre, that room to make everybody happy, especially with the increasing introduction of anti-harassment policies. Now, if I say that I am against anti-harassment policies at conventions, the obvious comeback is that, oh, well, you must be pro-harassment then. No, that's not the issue. These things are called anti-harassment policies, but they're not anti-harassment policies. They are ways to bring in other kinds of restrictions into conventions, and a lot of them are based on the anti-harassment policy listed at the Geek Feminism Wiki, and it has issues, especially for comic conventions, games conventions, RPG conventions, fan conventions of that sort. Harassment is bad, but an anti-harassment policy, unless you're hosting your convention in some kind of offshore libertarian paradise, or dystopia, depending on your point of view, you know, the law of the land already covers these issues. There's no need for the convention to do it. There's no need for the convention to even have a policy. If someone is sexually harassed, intimidated, beaten up, whatever, that's a matter for the police. It's not a matter for the convention staff, and convention staff can't be expected to be in a position to deal with that sort of thing. anti-harassment policies, as we've seen with reference to Denver Comic Con and all the rest of these issues, is the problem is that they go on the word of the accuser absolutely. So all it really takes is one asshole to make an accusation at you, and under the letter of the law, under some of these policies, that's it, you're out. So all it takes is one person to be a dick, and you're screwed, because listen and believe is written into it. And as well as the anti-harassment issues, they try to dictate what art you can have on display and so on, and I'm not talking within reason. And if you go by the letter of these things, then most stands at convention wouldn't be allowed. And again, all it's going to take is one person to be a dick, and your convention is screwed. So I think some kind of legal pushback, something that asserts the rights of vendors, is definitely needed. I don't know if this is the right issue to do it on. I do think they're in the right. I do think they have recourse. But more broadly, I think we need to look at this issue and start to swing things back the other way a little bit. Because at the moment, with all this safe spaces and so on, cons are becoming an extremely risky and financially non-viable option for a lot of people. And I'm not talking just people who make sex games or gratuitous violence games or comics or art or anything like that. I mean, normal people who aren't parts of any of these controversies, it's going to be harder and harder for them to do cons under this sword of Damocles hanging over them. And again, like I say, all it's going to take is one person being a dick, making a false accusation, or saying, that banner's sexist, and that's it. People are going to be screwed. So I do think we need to redress this balance and start moving cons away from being a safe space in the sense that they mean it, and back towards being a safe space for fans to enjoy their shit unmolested. So yeah, that's what I think about the whole thing. I hope conventions become a more viable thing again in the future, but the way things are going at the moment, it seems like this kind of millennial generation that's coming up wants to turn them into the same kind of problem-filled spaces we're seeing on campuses now. And I don't think that helps anyone. Peace out.